Hello there, I'm Jack First, and in the late 60s I studied agriculture, and from that time on I've had this hobby of collecting old agricultural books and gardening books. Now, one book in particular that I picked up some years ago, which has changed all my way of thinking regarding growing fruit and vegetables, is this book here, published in 1908, called The French Garden in England. Now, at that time, late Victorian era and the early part of the 20th century, yes, the English were and the British were producing hotbeds, but mainly producing pineapples and the like of that for the gentry, his lordship. But the French were producing hundreds of thousands of tons of very early vegetables, and I just couldn't, when I read this, I just couldn't believe the yields they were attaining. A little later on, this was published in 1908. It's called The French Garden by Thomas Smith. And by the way, this one is published by C.D. Mackay, the first book. This one goes on and it refers to the fact that they were employing French market gardeners to show the English how to produce these very early vegetables. So anyway, I couldn't believe these yields, so I did some experiments myself. We had terrific results. This resulted in the Gardeners World team coming to do a video on our allotment site, and a year later I produced this book, published by Green Books, called Hotbeds by myself, Jack First. Okay, and all I can say is, please just at least have a look at the reviews by some very eminent horticulturalists and gardeners who gave a very favourable review, and then you can decide whether you want to buy it or not. It's the 10th of January and I'm stood next to one of our hotbeds. Now, the last time I did a video on the hotbeds was back in 2014 when I was working for the Cellar Trust back in Yorkshire. At that time we could get any amount of horse manure, the traditional material for making hotbeds. But now I've been living now in North Wales for the last 5 years, and I just can't get hold of the quantities or quality of horse manure that we need. A lot of it now is on wood shavings, so I've had to find some alternatives. If we just look down here, these are the alternatives that I've been using, and perhaps you can find other alternatives wherever you are. So we're close to the sea here, so I've got lots of seaweed. You might just want to check with the council that you're able to get it. Then, being in the country surrounded by sheep, there's a lot of daggings. That's the soiled part of sheep that can't go to market at shearing time. Then locally, only 3 miles away, there's a brewery. So I've got lots of, I can get my hands on lots of brewery waste. This is hops. Then lots of leaves. I've got a quiet lane here. I can gather leaves, and also in the garden. All these materials here need to be kept on the dry side if possible, because if they get damp, they start heating up. And you don't want that heating up until you need them in a hotbed. To a lesser extent, I use a bit of wood shavings, paper, and any materials made from natural fibres, including clothes, anything like that. Okay then, so once all those materials are put in the hotbed, after 10 months in the hotbed, this is what you end up with. This lovely compost here. You can further filter it and get something a bit finer for potting compost or whatever. This is all that's left after 10 months. This is from my trousers. It's supposed to be 100% cotton, but there's the pockets, the zip, even the washing instructions. So that's all that's going to landfill. So look, what we're looking at here is a hotbed. Overall it's about 6 foot by 6 foot. The frame inside here is just under 5 foot by 5 foot. It's important that you can be able to reach into the middle from both sides. Now, don't spend big money. There's plenty of things. This is an old bit of fencing, and this framework that I've got here is timber that's over 100 years old. there's plenty of this stuff knocking about, but of course if you can't find it, you'll have to buy some new. I've made up this frame here just to demonstrate. So first of all, it's bottomless. These are guide rails here to support the light. Just to give you an idea, to get the angle here, I'll show you quickly. So there's an angle running that way, so you get a piece of timber which is about ½ an inch longer than your frame, okay, and you cut it from corner to corner, right, turn it round like so, and that gives you your angles. So don't forget, it needs to be about that much longer, and you just cut off the end a little bit. Okay, that's that sorted out. Now here, you always want to be, the reason it's a bit wider, you know, the whole hotbed wider than the frame, is so that as time progresses, underneath here it will fade with the heat that's underneath. So this is called a lining. All the time you can top this up and it will give off a little bit of residual heat to keep the thing going in very cold weather. Okay, so all these alternatives have been mixed up and gone into the hotbed. The next thing is you've got to leave this for about a week or two. It's not like the usual horse manure. It takes time to warm up. So you let it settle. You might have to move it around to keep it even a little bit. Then after about a week or two, when you notice it's warming up, then you take your compost, last year's hotbed material, and you put it on. If you're growing carrots, for instance, you need at least 6-7 inches. It's now the 5th of February. I've got here some salad leaves growing and some carrots in between. Should be eating the salad leaves by end of February. Now you'll notice here that, that things are sloping south, so that we're catching the early sun. If you've got any buildings or trees in front of your hotbed, leave it until April or even May. If you don't, you'll find if it's in the shade, these crops will be reaching out for light. Now you'll notice here the light here is very close to the growing medium and to the crop. Imagine you're in a room with a high ceiling. It's in winter and you're trying to read a book. You're going to need a lot of energy to warm up the room. So likewise, what we're doing here is trying to keep all the heat down here. Now when I finish this crop here in May, what I'm going to do is retain this fence at the north side. I'm going to open up the west side and the east side, having it pointing southeast and southwest. This is all going to be leveled out, and come May, June, they'll be going in here runner beans, these winter squashes. This is a very good crop to grow because they're a medium to heavy feeder. They like the deep soil, and you can eat these from September up to October, and they'll keep through till March or even April. So that's squashes, beans, tomatoes, maybe some courgettes. You'll get a lot out of this little space here. I'll finish off by just saying this, that the scientists are reckoning that things are getting in the winter wetter and warmer, drier and hotter in the summer. So to me it makes more sense to use some of these old systems and start growing in the winter when the water is around. Anyway, thanks very much for looking, and I'll give you some updates in the future. Thanks very much, and cheerio for now.